Today, we will take a look at fashion, consumer behavior patterns, and car design. Woman often varies. That was how Francis I, famous king of France, described the costly habit women have of always changing their outfits. The good king may have been observant, but he overlooked the fact that he, too, was a victim of the whims of fashion. Can anyone tell me why my wardrobe always needs to be renewed? Since the beginning of time, in all societies, fashions have come and gone. What is fashionable today will probably not be in 10 years, but could be all the rage again 20 years from now. Clothing fashion is often perceived as being dictated by unknown powers over which we have little control. For some, it's a form of commercial manipulation whose sole purpose is to keep us renewing our wardrobes. However, if we analyze the phenomenon more closely, we come to another conclusion. According to sociologists, fashion is above all the result of the changing needs of consumers and not industry pressure. Fashion is based on a sophisticated, non-verbal language that has a vocabulary and grammar all its own, the language of clothes. Just as they know more words than they use on a daily basis, most people have far more clothes than they need to dress themselves. A large part of a wardrobe has really little purpose, but rather serves primarily as a means of communication. Whether a person is old hat or avant-garde, a conservative or a maverick, his clothes say who he is and what his relations with others are. In a city's colorfully dressed crowds, clothes often betray people's cultural backgrounds, just as their accent does when they speak. Clothes are also a telling illustration of a person's values, occupation, and place in society. Who could possibly mistake, even at a distance, a business executive for a have-not? Yet both express, through the language of their dress, the same need to conform to a given group. These social pressures give rise to standards and taboos of dress. At the same time, though, clothes let us express our individuality, our changing image, and personal ideals. Even the faceless hordes of office workers make attempts to stand apart, if only by the color of their ties. By this particularity, the language of clothes even attests to people's private aspirations to move up the social ladder. For example, the infatuation with luxury and imitations, false furs, false diamonds, false big-name watches, may in fact express a secret yearning to be on a higher social level. The first step in the fashion process is the analysis of these individual and collective needs. This is done by specialized companies. These analysts try to predict roughly 2 years in advance what the major socio-cultural and artistic trends will be. Drawing their inspiration from huge fabric banks, the designers put together palettes of colors, textures, and shapes that will reflect these future trends. The results of their research are presented in the form of exposition books or panels in which the fashion trends are shown closely linked to trends in architecture, painting, advertising, and the movies. Whether the trends will actually materialize or not depends on the technology available. The textile manufacturers have to develop processes capable of reproducing on an enormous scale the shades, textures, and styles the designers have created on paper. Technological progress has a profound impact on fashion. Natural fibers like cotton have been complemented with a series of synthetic fibers with uncommon properties. The processes used to make clothes have changed accordingly. For instance, researchers recently developed a revolutionary new process which, among other things, will print a fabric. In traditional dyeing and printing processes, the color to be applied is first dissolved in a solvent. The dye particles, under the combined action of solvents and heat, gain access to the interior of the fiber of the fabric. Once dried and cooled, these particles remain firmly embedded in the narrow capillary channels of the fiber. However, when a piece of clothing has been worn and washed several times, the dye particles are inclined to wander out through the mesh of the fiber, causing the fabric to fade. But with the new processes, various compounds, such as pigments, can be chemically combined permanently to the fibers of a fabric. The chemical reaction, called grafting, is obtained by means of an accelerator which hurtles electrons onto the material to be treated, and by the affixing of polymer chains to the pigment particles. As a result of that blast of energy, the polymer chains entrap the pigment particles. Moreover, chemical bonds form between the polymers fixed to the pigments and the fibers of the fabric. The latter then becomes more resistant to chemical erosion, deformation, and high temperatures. Marketing is the final stage in the fashion process. It is only at this step that clothing manufacturers can attempt to influence the choice of the consumer. One of the ways they do this is to package the product or highlight it by presenting it attractively. Manufacturers will also capitalize on famous brand names, which become a sign of recognition, of belonging to a group, a status symbol. But no matter how clever, these ploys really have minimal impact on fashion trends. In the final analysis, the consumer has the last word. In matters of fashion, consumers are free to make their own choices. But this doesn't stop the manufacturers from waging fierce battles to win your heart and your money. Like generals, they map out strategies and define targets. But to do so, first, they spy on your every habit. In our society, the consumer is king, and advertising, queen. Under a constant barrage of sounds and images, the prospective buyer often doesn't know which way to turn. However, advertisers don't have an easy time of it either. Competition is fierce out there. In order to survive in the advertising jungle, they have but one recourse. They have to keep close tabs on consumer behavior patterns. And to do this, they rely on highly sophisticated techniques. The most popular and accurate of these techniques enables them to measure the audience. That is, the number of viewers watching their television commercials. This is done with an electronic device called the audimeter. Specialized companies install audimeters in a number of households of a group understudy. The devices are permanently connected to all the television sets and video cassette recorders in the home. When a viewer turns on the television, the audimeter immediately goes on. It transmits a signal telling the viewer to indicate his presence, which he then does by pressing a button. From that moment on, and for as long as the TV stays on, the audimeter records the channel being watched. It will also record channel switches, the turning on of the videocassette recorder, or the use of a video game. This is all done automatically. However, when the viewer leaves the room, he notifies the audimeter by pressing the button. The device then stops recording his presence. The audimeter stores all this information. The following night, the data is relayed by telephone line to a data processing center. There, video recorders tape all the television channels. Technicians carefully review all these recordings to determine the exact time the programs and commercials were aired. Concurrently, powerful computers process the data the audimeters have gathered. Based on the several hundred homes equipped with audimeters, statistical computations evaluate the total number of viewers, or rating, for every program and commercial for the whole of the country. This data is then forwarded to the advertisers, enabling them to assess whether or not the commercial aired the previous day had the hoped-for impact. As for the broadcasters, they can use the audimeter's data to set their advertising rates, the highest rates being for prime-time viewing hours. Audimeter data gathering can go even further. For example, it can be used to form the basis for a social and economic profile of the viewer. In fact, every member of a household has his or her own key to communicate with the audimeter. The main computer has the information on the age, gender, income level, and occupation of every member of the selected households. The data gathered will therefore determine the category of people having viewed a given commercial: bachelors over 30, housewives, executives, or people who are retired, for example. Advertisers can thus design their commercials to target a precise audience and evaluate whether or not they have succeeded in reaching that target. Studies have shown that at any given moment, 92% of the viewers use their audimeter correctly. In addition, 25% of the test group is renewed every year, and no changes in behavior patterns or weariness have been noted among participating viewers. While the audimeter has become somewhat of a cult figure in television, it is not without its drawbacks. For instance, it cannot evaluate a viewer's level of concentration. To achieve an even higher degree of accuracy, the experts are considering replacing push-button audimeters by passive systems that do not require the active participation of the viewer. One of the devices now being tested consists of an optical sensor capable of recognizing certain distinctive features of a person's face. Initially, the system learns to identify each of the members of a household and memorizes their facial features. Then, as soon as the television is turned on, it scans the room continually. It will recognize the viewers every time they sit down in front of the small screen. More efficient and accurate than the audimeter, this new technique is bound to be welcomed by advertisers. However, it does raise some concerns among television viewers, some of whom fear the advertising agencies will be watching their every move.
Clothes are not the only things to be affected by fashion. Cars are also being constantly redesigned. You know, I wonder whatever happened to my first car. Well, one thing's for certain, it would be pretty outdated next to my latest model.
Since its invention over a century ago, the automobile has developed by leaps and bounds. Today's automobiles look more like sophisticated spacecraft than they do their real ancestor, the horse-drawn carriage. The development of the automobile has brought substantial improvement in its performances. But this machine is much more than a means of transportation. Like any other product of mass consumption, the car has had to keep up with the changing needs of its users. Extensive studies conducted by the automobile manufacturers show that as we near the close of this century, safety ranks high on the list of motorists' concerns. This is hardly surprising, considering that in many countries, road accidents are one of the main causes of mortality. A great deal of research is therefore going into making cars safer. Part of the research focuses on passive safety. That is a series of measures designed to protect passengers in the event of an accident. This is done by conducting crash tests in tightly controlled conditions. The passengers are replaced by dummies as morphologically close to the human body as possible. One solution consists of developing better systems to keep passengers in their seats. For example, safety belts are more effective if they retract upon impact, since they hold the passenger more firmly in the seat. In addition, if the upper anchor of the middle rear seat belt moves sideways, it can prevent injury to the neck in the event of a collision from the side. As for airbags, they prevent the passenger's head from hitting the steering wheel. The best safety seats for children are the ones that are built into the car seat. Because of their simplicity of use, they get used. All these passive safety features are expected to become widespread in the years to come. However, the auto industry is also looking to heighten the active safety of cars, measures designed to help drivers avoid accidents. For example, promising research is being conducted to prevent drivers from falling asleep at the wheel. Drowsiness causes almost a third of highway fatalities. Studies in driving simulators have proven that at the wheel, an alert driver very subtly but constantly alters course. These slight adjustments are involuntary, and they vary like a signature from one person to the next. When measuring the electrical activity of their subjects' brains, the researchers observed that the way the drivers alter course changes when their concentration falters. In their opinion, a motion sensor connected to the steering wheel would suffice to keep a driver from dozing off. When the system ceases to recognize the movements the driver normally makes when alert, it would set off a warning sound or light signal that would jolt the nodding driver awake. As we near the 21st century, another consumer concern is affecting the auto industry: environment protection. In an effort to make cars more fuel efficient, the experts are turning to aerodynamics. At 90 kilometers an hour, half the energy a car consumes is spent resisting air friction. That friction is caused largely by turbulence, uneven airflow over the surface of the car. Wind tunnel studies on scale models allow the researchers to determine which shapes minimize turbulence. This will boost a car's fuel economy by 10% and improve its stability, hence its safety. Moreover, tomorrow's urban car may well be powered by electricity. Electric motor technology has already been mastered. Some electric prototypes can attain speeds of 90 kilometers an hour. However, these cars have a drawback. The electric batteries take up a considerable amount of space in the car and provide only limited mileage between recharges. Car design has always interested motorists. Every model is designed with a certain socio-economic group in mind. Increasingly, though, design engineers are striving to build cars that will satisfy a large clientele. For example, it is estimated that one of the trends of the future will be the live-in car, a veritable extension of the home. This vehicle will include the complete range of accessories, active and passive safety, comfort, and environment protection. According to the analysts, these vehicles should be highly marketable given the growing emphasis on family values and quality of life.
On the consumer stage, the players will always try to mystify the public. But the public will always be free to leave the theater whenever they like.